Again, good morning, everyone. Like Nathan said, my name is Anthony Wilkes. I'm one of the new additions to Life and Safety. A little bit of today, we're going to talk about the National Emphasis Program on Warehousing and Distribution. But first, before we get started, let me tell you a little bit about myself. So for 28 years, I recently retired from South Carolina OSHA. I spent 28 years with the agency. The last 18 years, I was the compliance manager. So I did manage most of the day-to-day operations for the compliance section. I worked on a lot of strategic planning, even talking about deciding what emphasis programs that South Carolina OSHA was going to participate in. So that's what I did for the last 28 years. And now recently I started off with Life and Safety as the Vice President of Business Development and a senior consultant. As always, since I've spent a lot of time with OSHA, I like to talk about a little bit about OSHA too. In 1970, the OSHA Act was actually signed by President Nixon. And one of the things it was designed to do was reduce workplace fatalities, injuries, and illnesses. And part of that, over those 50-something years, OSHA has seen a significant reduction in workplace injury, illnesses, and fatalities. Under this OSHA Act, it gave OSHA the authority to create programs to target employers for inspections. And that's how we come about getting some of these emphasis programs. And also, under the OSHA Act, it created the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And that's why OSHA got to the point of this NEP. So during this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the NEP. We're going to talk about some hazards that you'll see in this type of industries. And then we'll talk about who's actually going to get inspected for this. I mentioned to you that the BLS data has shown a significant shows that injury illness rates for the warehousing and distribution industries are significantly higher than in private industry overall. So OSHA looked at a 5-year average of the data for over 5-year average for the data from 2017 to 2021. The private sector industries, the total recordable case rate was 2.76. And the DART rate, which is the days away from work, restricted transfer, was 1.6. But in the general warehousing industry, the total recordable case rate was 5.18 over that same time frame, and the DART rate was 4.06. For carriers and express delivery, the total recordable rate was 8.14, and the DART rate was 6.3. Refrigerated warehousing, the total recordable case rate was 5.16, and the DART rate was 4.06. So on July the 13th, OSHA announced this NEP, and it aims to identify and reduce or eliminate workplace hazards in warehousing and distribution centers, mail and postal processing and distribution centers, parcel delivery, courier service, and your local delivery industries, as well as your high injury rate retail establishments. This NEP provides policies and procedures for OSHA area offices and state plans, because state plans were required to adopt this program or something very similar to it. So it provides the policy and procedures for OSHA to utilize while conducting these comprehensive safety program plan inspections of your establishments within those designated lists, next codes listed in the NEP. So some of the purpose of this is to improve worker safety by reducing exposure to some of those common hazards in those targeted industries. And we're going to talk a little bit more about them too. So you got powered industrial trucks, material handling and storage. You got walking working surfaces, of course, means of egress, fire protections. You got slips, trips, and falls, and you got some fall hazards also. Also, OSHA says, hey, we're going to improve worker health outcomes by reducing exposures to heat and ergonomic hazards. So not only you may get a program safety inspection, if they find out that you got some other hazards such as heat and ergonomics, you may be considered for a health inspection. So all of this will be considered during the NEP inspections and the hazards identified. Okay. As far as forklift operations, warehouses are a constant moving mix of people, vehicles, and equipment. Forklift operators must be properly trained to ensure understanding of working environment. This prevent injuries to operators and pedestrians and damage to other warehouse equipment such as storage racks, stored materials, etc. As far as forklift operations, only trained and certified workers may operate a forklift. Operators must be trained on the type of vehicle in use and on the workplace conditions. And before operating the vehicle, examine it for hazardous conditions which would make it unsafe to operate. Of course, one of the most common items OSHA found is wearing a seatbelt. Operators must always wear a seatbelt if available. Never exceed the rated load and ensure it is stable and balanced. Also ensure you have enough clearance when raising, loading, and operating the vehicle, and follow safe procedures for picking up, putting down, and stacking loads. Of course, keeping a safe distance from the platform ramps and loading dock edges. Watch out for pedestrians and observe speed limits. And use horns that cross aisles and obstructive views. As far as maintenance and repair, ensure the vehicles are maintained and repaired in accordance with the manufacturer recommendations. One of the things that you must do is remove from service any forklift found to be in unsafe operating conditions. And do not modify or make additions to the forklift that could affect the capacity and or safe operations without the proper written approval from the manufacturer. Now, and also with forklift operations, you're seeing more battery operated forklifts or electric charge forklifts. So some of the charging stations must properly position forklifts and apply the brakes before attempting to change or charge the batteries. Of course, ensure fire extinguishers are available and fully charged. Provide the proper personal protective equipment such as rubber gloves and eye and face protection if employees are adding any electrolytes. And provide conveyors, overhead hoists, or equivalent materials for handling equipment for servicing the batteries. And also, we talked about providing an eye wash and shower facility for workers exposed to battery acids, and provide adequate ventilation and prohibit smoking and open flames in and around those charging areas. Some other considerations when dealing with powered industrial trucks is to maintain safe clearance for aisles and at loading docks or passages, provide visual warnings near dock edges, and follow the required procedures for refueling gas or propane fueled forklifts, and train workers on the hazards associated with combustion byproducts of forklift operations such as carbon monoxide. Material handling is also another one of those hazards in the warehouse and the distribution industry. So safe storage and handling of materials in the warehouse is critical to prevent worker injury and property damage. For storage and handling, you want to inspect and maintain shelving and racking to prevent the collapse. If damage occurs, immediately isolate the area. Install rack upright guards to prevent damage from incidental forklift contact. Ensure materials are stored on racks, shelving, and other storage devices do not create a hazard. One of the things we always found was ensure bags, containers, bundles are stored in tiers that make sure they're stacked, blocked, and interlocked, and limited in height so they are stable and secure to prevent sliding or collapse. Properly stack loose and unboxed materials to prevent falling hazards. Keep storage areas free from accumulation of materials that could lead to tripping, fires, explosions. Prevent heavier loads on, place heavier loads on lower or middle shelves, and also ensure that the storage, shelving, and rack and load capacities are not exceeded. Now, also in warehouse and distribution centers, you also have a lot of conveyors. So you want to inspect the conveyors regularly. Ensure that the pinch points are adequately guarded. Develop procedures for locking out conveyors when necessary. For example, when materials have fallen off or become jammed, and train the workers in these procedures, and provide proper lighting and working surfaces in the area surrounding the conveyor. As far as mechanical handling equipment, provide periodic maintenance of pallet jacks and forklifts. Ensure elevators and hoists for lifting materials are used in adequate safe clearances, no obstructions, appropriate signals, and directional warning signs. Ensure sufficient safe clearance in aisles at loading docks, through doorways, and wherever turns or passages must be made. Mark boundaries of permanent aisles and passages when handling equipment is used near to ensure proper clearance. You want to keep your aisles and passageways clear and unobstructed. One of the things that you also want to do is keep your floors well maintained. We're talking no ruts or bumps. You want to reduce the force when using manual material handling equipment to prevent whole body vibration and shock. Slip, trips, and falls. Slip, trips, and falls is probably the number one event that happens for injuries in the workplace. And so warehouses and distributions are no different. Warehousing environments are no exception and can present these unique challenges because of the ever-changing environment as products are loaded, unloaded, and moved around the warehouse. Employees should understand best practices preventing these injuries caused by slips, trips, and falls in the workplace. Some general considerations: ensure that each worker on a walking working surface with an unprotected side or edge that is at 4 feet or more above the lower level is protected from falling. Provide and ensure workers use head protection if they are exposed to falling object hazards. You want to train workers on the fall hazards in a language that they can understand, okay? And then train workers using safety ladder systems or personal fall arrest systems on the proper use, operation, maintenance, as well as proper methods of equipment inspection and storage. And then you'll retrain the workers anytime there's changes in the workplace, changes in the types of fall protection systems or equipment, or when inadequacies in an affected worker's knowledge or use of fall protection systems or equipment is noted. Floors, of course, you want to keep floors and aisles clear of clutter, electrical cords, hoses, spills, and other hazards that could cause slips, trips, or falls. Where floors may be wet or slippery, of course, due to high humidity and or the presence of ice or water. You want to maintain good drainage and use graded floors, platforms, or rubber mats to provide a dry place for workers to stand while working. Ladders is another one of those major hazards, and it's easy to find for a OSHA compliance officer. So you want to inspect the ladders to identify any visible defects that could cause injury, and you remove any of those ladders with structural or other defects from service and tag it. You want to maintain 3 points of contact when climbing up or down ladders, and do not carry any object or load that could cause a loss of balance or fall while climbing. Use portable ladders only on stable and level surfaces unless they are secured or stabilized. And do not move, shift, or extend any portable ladder while in use. Never use the top caps of step ladders as a step. That should be common. Never place a portable ladder on a box, barrel, or other unstable base to obtain additional height. And do not move a mobile ladder, stand, or platform when in use. And of course, equip mobile ladder stands and platforms that have wheels or casters with a system to impede horizontal movement when a worker is on the stand or platform. For stairs, equip flights of stairs having at least 3 treads and at least 4 risers with handrails and stair rail systems. Dock boards, you want to secure portable dock boards by anchoring them in place or by using equipment or devices that prevent the dock board from moving out of a safe position. You want to use measures such as wheel chocks or dock locks to prevent the transport vehicle from moving on which the dock boards are placed. Use portable dock boards that are equipped with handholds to prevent safe handling of these dock boards, and block exposed or open dock doors and other areas where someone could fall. Okay. So we'll talk a little bit about emergency planning. Emergencies are disasters that can strike anywhere, right? At any time, bringing the workplace injury illnesses with them. Employers and workers may be required to deal with an emergency when it is least expected, and proper planning before emergency is necessary to respond effectively. A workplace emergency is a situation that threatens workers, customers, or the public, disrupts or shuts down operations, or causes physical or environmental damage. So warehousing employers should have an emergency plan that describes what is expected of the workers in the event of emergency, including those provisions for emergency exit locations and evacuation procedures for accounting for all workers and visitors, and the location and use of fire extinguishers and other emergency equipment. So talk about exit routes. You want to keep those free and unobstructed. Ensure exit signs are illuminated and clearly visible. You want to keep those safeguards designed to protect the workers during an emergency, such as your sprinkler systems, alarm system, your fire doors, in proper working order. Ensure exit routes are adequately lit. Exit routes must not go through a room that can be locked, such as a bathroom, nor it may lead to a dead-end corridor. So keep that in mind. And then you mark your doorways or passageways along an exit route that could be mistaken for exit with a not an exit or language identifying the actual use. And if the direction of travel to the nearest exit is not immediately apparent, post signs along the exit access indicating the direction of travel to the nearest exit. All right. Some fire hazards: if portable fire extinguishers are available and intended for workers' use now, ensure that fire extinguishers are adequate and appropriate for the hazard present in the facility. You want to mount and locate and identify extinguishers so that they are readily accessible in an emergency. Ensure fire extinguishers are fully charged and operable, and conduct a visual inspection of all fire extinguishers monthly and conduct maintenance annually. And then you want to train workers on the general purpose of fire extinguisher use and the hazards involved with incipient stage firefighting, and then retrain those workers at least annually. So medical services and first aid, you want to, so if you ensure a trained first aid provider is on site. Now, unless you're planning to use an off-site first aid provider, make sure that is within 3 to 4 minutes of the workplace. Now, if workers may be exposed to corrosive materials, you talk battery changing areas or some other chemicals in the place, provide facilities in the work area for quick drenching or flushing of the eyes and body. So you might have to provide an eye wash and shower or something. If employers are responsible for rendering medical assistance as part of their job duties, then you may have some additional requirements under the bloodborne pathogen standard. So keep that in mind. Incidental chemical spills. You want to ensure chemicals are stored properly in the warehouse. You want to make sure you have a written spill control plan, and train workers on how to clean up incidental spills, including how to protect themselves properly and dispose of the used materials. Provide the proper personal protective equipment and enforce its use. And incidental spills now are situations where a spilled release chemical can be absorbed, neutralized, or otherwise controlled at the time of the release by the workers in the immediate area. Now, if there's a potential for a substantial release, the emergency response operations may be subject to the HAZWOPER standard. That's under 1910-120. And other issues may warrant consideration in a warehouse facility emergency plan, including but not limited to, of course, you may have to run across some other emergencies like bloodborne pathogens. You may have unauthorized access to your facilities, workplace violence, including active shooter situations. And many types of these emergencies can be anticipated in the planning process, which can help employers and workers plan for other unpredictable situations. Okay. Note some warehouse operations may be required to have an emergency action plan also, and these include operations in warehouses that has hazardous substances that are subject to the process safety management standard, such as your refrigerator warehouses. They may have anhydrous ammonia. They'll be covered under HAZWOPER, or they may have more flammable chemicals in the facility.
Hey, Anthony, we just had a quick question come through from Rick. The question is, for chemical spills, are employees required to be trained to the awareness level to respond and operations to control spills on site?
For HAZWOPER, well, if it's a chemical spill, if it's controllable, if it's one of those if it's those small incidental spills, all they need is to be trained as to how to clean that spill up. Now, when you start getting into that HAZWOPER, then you're talking about those uncontrolled releases. And as to that awareness level, they're aware of it and know how to activate the your emergency action plan. Or then there's levels that you can go to as to how to control the spill. But if it's just an incidental release, and we define incidental release, are situations where a spill release of chemicals can be absorbed, neutralized, or otherwise controlled at the time of the release by the workers in the immediate area. If there's a potential for a substantial release, then you're covered under the HAZWOPER standard. So I hope I answered that question. If not, maybe we can talk a little bit later on that one. Okay.
You did. Thank you. Rick said, got it. Appreciate it, Anthony. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. So when we talk about these hazardous chemicals, we hazard communication, it has always been one of the most frequently cited standards within OSHA. And it's basically the employee's right to know what they're working with. So where chemicals are present in the warehouse and workers may be exposed to those chemicals under normal conditions of use or in a foreseeable emergency, that you're subject to that hazard communication standard. Warehousing establishments are frequently cited under this standard, just like everybody else in all other employers. So implement an effective hazard communication program. You got to be familiar with the provision of the standard. Prepare a written hazard communication program for your facility. You want to maintain a list of hazardous chemicals known to be present in the facility and maintain the safety data sheets for each. Ensure the safety data sheets are readily accessible. Labeling, OSHA put a big emphasis on labeling. So keep labels on ship containers and label workplace containers where required, including secondary containers. All right. Train workers on the hazardous chemicals in the work area before initial assignment and when new hazards are introduced. Include the requirements of the hazard, include the requirements for hazards of chemicals, appropriate protective measures, and where and how to find the additional information. And then you want to review your hazard communication program periodically and when conditions change in the workplace. As far as process safety management, OSHA's process safety management, the standard applies to warehouse facilities that have certain highly hazardous chemicals at above specific quantities. One of those is anhydrous ammonia, and that's at 10,000 pounds or more. And also flammables is at 10,000 pounds or more in one location in a quantity of 10,000 pounds or more, of course. So the PSM standard emphasizes the management of hazards associated with highly hazardous chemicals and establishes a comprehensive management program. Okay. Chemical warehousing and distribution. So chemical warehousing and some chemical warehousing and distribution facilities process, formulate, blend, repackage, store, and market chemical products must maintain chemicals safely and securely to prevent workplace injuries and illnesses. and those catastrophic chemical accidents. So store all your chemicals safely and securely. Account for chemicals in all on-site containers that could be impacted by the same emergency event, such as a fire. Periodically inspect those tank systems. Ensure adequate secondary containment for chemicals to contain spills or leaks. Ensure hazardous and flammable chemicals are stored in structurally appropriate buildings that are required with proper fire protection. And store chemicals away from forklift traffic areas, okay? Some other hazards: warehouses often contain many different types of electrical hazards, electrical equipment and systems, and employers are responsible for ensuring they are free from recognized hazards. Make sure you ground all supply systems, electrical circuits, electrical equipment, and ensure grounding paths are permanent, continuous, and effective. Ensure sufficient clearance in front of electrical panels and around all electrical equipment. Do not use these areas for storage. Electrical rooms are not to be used for storage. Guard live parts for electrical equipment at all times. You want to visually inspect all electrical equipment before use and remove from service any equipment with frayed cords, missing ground prongs, cracked tool casings. You want to close those unused openings in cabinets, boxes, and fittings, and provide covers for all pull boxes, junction boxes, and fittings. Those are low-hanging fruit for OSHA. They can find them all day, every day. Flexible cords, do not use as a substitute for fixed wiring. Do not use where it's attached to a building surface. And do not use through or conceal behind holes in walls, ceilings, or floors, or through doorways or windows. Ensure flexible cords and cables are connected to devices and fittings so that the strain relief is provided to prevent pull on joints or terminal screws, okay? Lockout, tag out. So workers conducting equipment maintenance or service may be seriously injured or killed if hazardous energy is not properly controlled. If there's an issue with lockout, tag out, event that happens with lockout that's caused by it is usually a severe injury. Injuries resulting from the failure to control the hazard during the maintenance act can be serious or fatal. So warehouse operations need a lockout tagout program to ensure that before any worker performs any service in the maintenance, the machine or equipment is isolated from the energy source and rendered inoperative. So the program should include 3 core components: your energy control procedures, your employee training, and your periodic inspections, okay? Now, more and more in workplaces, we're seeing a lot more automation and robotics. So there are many automated tools in the warehouse. You got conveyors, you got labelers, you got automatic pallet wrappers. When not properly integrated in the workplace, these tools can create significant struck by, caught between, and other hazards. And additionally, some warehouses may utilize collaborative or non-collaborative industrial robots. Workers should be made aware of the unique hazards associated with working around or with industrial robots. And make sure you really have a good lockout tagout program or how you isolate the energy when employees have to go within within close proximity of these automated robots. So some other hazards in the warehouse, of course, ergonomics and musculoskeletal disorders. Warehouse they may be exposed to the ergonomic risk factors in the workplace, such as lifting and lowering heavy items, bending, reaching overhead, pushing and pulling heavy loads, working in awkward postures, and performing the same or similar tasks repetitively. Exposure to these known risk factors increase workers' risk to these MSDAs, such as muscle strains, lower back, and shoulder injuries, carpal tunnel, tendonitis, and others. So make sure you're looking at your facility for these ergonomic hazards and how can you mitigate this. Also, stress and fatigue associated with a fast workplace and or the use of continuous performance monitoring systems can increase worker injury rates and produce negative effects. So look at some of your performance monitoring systems and see if that's causing a stress and fatigue on your workers. I mentioned earlier about heat illness. OSHA issued a national emphasis program on heat, and warehousing is no different. Some warehouse workers are affected with heat by performing physical work in high ambient heat, especially if the facility is also humid and not climate controlled. So allow for new or returning workers to gradually increase workloads and take more frequent breaks as they get acclimated to the work environment. Provide workers with drinking water, rest, shade or cool areas. Ensure the warehouse is well ventilated, and then also train workers on heat-related illnesses and how to spot common symptoms and what to do when a worker suspects a heat-related illness is occurring. And also train your supervisors to be able to monitor workers for signs of illnesses and ensure access to first aid and prompt medical attention. Also in refrigerated warehousing, you have that cold environment that you're going to have to deal with. So working in cold environments seems to sometimes increase the risk of some of those musculoskeletal disorders. And also most warehouses use temporary workers. You should make sure you treat your temporary workers just like you and treat and train your temporary workers just as you do all the other workers. We find a lot of times that temporary workers have a higher injury illness rate. Some of the most common cited standards for OSHA, of course, you got this subpart D, which is your walking and working surfaces. That's where you get your stairways, your ladders, your dock boards, your duty to have fall protection. Subpart E is your exit routes and emergency planning. That's where you get your fire prevention plans, your emergency action plans. Subpart F is for man lifts. A lot of different warehouses use man lifts in the warehouse. Subpart G, that's your occupational health and environmental control. Of course, you got ventilation, but you also find your occupational noise exposures in subpart G. Subpart H is your hazardous materials. That's where you get your storage and handling of liquefied petroleum gases, anhydrous ammonia, your process safety management, and your HAZWOPER standards. Subpart I is your personal protective equipment. Some of your eye and face protections, your head protection, foot protection, hand protection. Hand injuries are prominent now. What's the next one? Your subpart J is your general environmental controls. That's where you'll find your hazard communication standard, your control of hazardous energy. Subpart K is your medical and first aid, of course. Subpart L is fire protection. That's where you'll see where you portable fire extinguishers are in that. Subpart N is material handling and storage. That's where you get your powered industrial trucks, your overhead and gantry cranes, your slings. Subpart N is your machinery and machine guarding. And that's where you got your general machine guarding requirements, but you also have some of your mechanical power transmission equipment. Subpart P is your hands and portable power tools and other hand equipment. Subpart S is electrical, ground. That's where you get your grounding, some of your wiring methods and your use of equipment, your grounding issues. And of course, subpart Z is your toxic and hazardous substances, and that's where you will find your hazard communication. As you see that OSHA, some of the common standards falls all throughout the entire book, 1910, right? So let's talk about getting inspected. So the NEP requires for a comprehensive safety and health safety inspection. So except for high injury retail establishments, that everybody else will be comprehensive. Those high injury retail establishments will be a partial inspections. Now, in those high injury retail establishments, they'll be more concerned with the storage and loading of the areas. Now, in those, also OSHA may expand the scope of those inspections where there's evidence that conditions that there may be other conditions found in other areas of the establishment. And I mentioned to you about heat and ergonomic hazards. So you're going to start out with, but if they notice any heat and ergonomics hazards, there may be a referral over to the health. So you may end up getting a health and a safety inspection. Okay. And when OSHA talks about comprehensive safety inspections, they're looking at everything, wall to wall, basically, inside your facility, probably except for your office area. Right. So here's the covered list. We talked about those industries already. There's 2 master lists will be created to conduct inspections. The first list will consist of establishments that are identified NAICS codes in Table 2. So the ones in Table 2 will be the first list that OSHA generates. The second list will consist of a limited number of high-rate retailers establishments within the NAICS codes listed in Table 3. Okay? And there we go again. We talk about this programmed and unprogrammed safety inspections. OSHA may exercise their discretionary authority on expanding unprogrammed inspections. So if you're in one of these industries and you have an unprogrammed inspections for fatality, catastrophes, complaints, or referrals, OSHA may exercise their authority and expand that inspection to be a full comprehensive inspection. Okay? Excluded under this NEP are, of course, those postal or package transportation delivery to your residents or businesses. They're excluded under this NEP. Right? So under the NEP, there was a 90-day outreach program for these covered industries, and OSHA has done a fairly good job of getting the word out since July the 13th. That they are outreach, they put out different information about this. Those NAICS codes we looked at them, they are listed, included in tables 2 and 3. Inspections are to begin on or after October the 13th, which was last Friday. So now OSHA, according to the NEP, OSHA now has the authority to come out and do those comprehensive inspections. And the NEP expires 3 years from the effective date of July the 13th. So this will go on until July 2026. Now, from my history, with my knowledge with OSHA over the years, if they find significant issues, they may extend that NEP. Now, if anybody have any questions at this time, Nathan, we'll take any questions at this time.
Absolutely. Thank you, Anthony. That was some great information. I do have a couple of questions. I know you kind of answered it earlier with you were talking about extension cords and things like that.
Right.
What are some other things that OSHA will be most likely to look for if and when they show up? Like what are some other low-hanging fruit, so to speak?
Extension cords, hazard communication, those are some of the low-hanging fruit. Fire extinguishers not being inspected. It's easy to sit back and just watch individuals, how they operate, powered industrial truck operators, not utilizing seat belts.
Gotcha.
Some of those, and then some things are just obvious. Machine guarding, those things are real obvious on those things. So.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Another question. If OSHA does show up to one of these industries or one of these businesses that we're talking to today, what's the best thing for the safety person to do? Kind of what would be a standard operating procedure when OSHA shows up and says, hey, we're here exercising our right to inspect your facility?
Well, I always encourage employers, no matter what regulatory agency that comes to your facility, do you have a process or a program to deal with the regulatory agency? So one of the things you want to try to do is develop your process. If OSHA shows up to your facility dealing with one of these emphasis programs, make sure that OSHA gives you what their scope is. Make sure that you are covered by this emphasis program, and then go from there. And then, of course, the sales pitch, you can always call us here at Life and Safety to help you get through that process.
Awesome. One more question. Actually, these are kind of two questions. They kind of roll into one. One of the questions was, where do we start, or is there a kind of a checklist that a company, a warehousing business could go through to find out, are they compliant? I mean, there was a lot of stuff that you covered, different programs, policies, procedures. Where does someone start?
Yeah. So actually, that's a good question, Nathan. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that. You might bring it up a little bit later on here at Life and Safety. We've, if you go to our webpage, we've put out some information just on the warehousing industry, and the employers can go there to start looking at what they have. And of course, just start going through that process one step at a time. Okay.
Absolutely. Let me go ahead and share my screen here for just a second. I'm going to take over from you. So as Anthony mentioned, and because this is a new national emphasis program, we at Life and Safety have put together a special kind of turnkey bundle for anybody who does want some assistance from us. Of course, you can call us and just talk to us. We're happy to do that any day or time. But we've created a set of 15 programs and 23 training topics. As Anthony mentioned, you can go onto our website. There's a couple little screenshots there on the screen. That is a turnkey solution that covers the bare minimum of what would be required for an OSHA safety program, including your policies and procedures, your training, and your inspections. All of that documentation is there and is included. You can also add, we do have a digital inspection tool. I know some of you may or may not want to use that, but it is a great tool to be able to inspect whatever it is, your forklifts, your fire extinguishers, and roll that data up into a nice visual dashboard. I know I'm shamelessly upselling, so thank you for those of you who've hung on the line with me. But if you want any information on that, please feel free to call us. Again, if you just want to talk, we are more than happy to do that. We can also come out to your facility and do what we call a gap analysis, where we take a look at what do you have, what don't you have, what can we do to help fill in those gaps, or what can you do to do it yourselves. That's where Life and Safety shines, is in those gap analysis. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Anthony, for presenting. That was some fantastic information. We are going to be attending the South Tech Expo here in Greenville at the Expo Center next week, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We'll be walking the floor. We don't have a booth, but we will be there. So if you all are there, pull us to the side, say hi to us. In November, we're also going to the South Carolina Manufacturing Conference and Expo. We will be exhibiting there. That's also at the Expo Center in November. Our next webinar is next month. That's our sustainability energy audit. Matt Craddock is going to be presenting that. That's NFPA 70B. That's something new that we've added to our repertoire with Matt coming on. He joined us a couple of years ago, and we're starting to go out and do energy audits where we use IR scanning electrical junction boxes to see if there's any hot spots, things like that. I just gave you as much information as I know. I'm the IT guy, but if you want to talk to Matt, please feel free to call us. And then we do have a couple other webinars coming up in January and February. Anthony will be presenting again on record keeping in January. That's a timely topic. And then in February, we'll be going over audiometric testing and hearing conservation with one of our other guys, Jay Jordan. Again, this presentation has been recorded. It will be posted to our YouTube channel next week. The QR code on the bottom left-hand side of your screen right now will take you to that YouTube channel. If you do want to send us a quick email right now, the QR code on the bottom right-hand side of the screen, hold up your phone, open the camera, point to that QR code. It'll create an email message that sends it to our main mailbox. Just ask us whatever the question is, ask it to us. We'll forward it to the right person, and they will get back with you typically within 1 to 2 business days. Again, thank you everyone so much for your time today. Thank you, Anthony, for an excellent presentation. You all have a great day and stay safe out there.
Thank you, Nathan.
Thank you, Anthony.